Hello everyone, welcome to Tutorials by Decade. My name is Decade, and today we're going to go over breakable objects. Now, normally I would do this video along with you guys, but this is like my 5th or 6th time recording this video, as every single time I've tried to record it, something has gone wrong. So with that being said, I will walk you through what I have done to achieve what we're about to see here. So you walk over here and you hit the pot and it breaks. I still have to figure out why the pot doesn't fully disappear. It could just be a mistake on my end. But nonetheless, let's go over how this is done. So the first thing you want to do is you want to work your way to the objects here. So for me, they're under Assets, Art, World, and then Objects. You want to make sure that they're at 16 pixels per unit. Filter mode is point no filter, and compression is at none. When you do those, hit apply. Then you want to open the sprite editor, go over to slice and change that to grid by cell size, and then 16 by 16. I'm not going to do that because I've already done that. Now, whenever you do that, you're going to get 4 little squares on these little ones here, and quite honestly on all of these as well. Don't worry about all of these just yet. Worry about these 4 right here. So instead of 4 squares, you want to delete 3 of them and then enlarge the 4th one to be a 32 by 32, as you see down here in the lower right. In order to do that, you just highlight and then hit delete. I'm not going to do that on here. And then it'll delete it. And then on the 4th square, you just highlight it and drag it until it's 32 by 32. I'm gonna get that one back down to 16 by 16. Once you're done with all that, make sure you hit apply. It's gonna ask me if I want to save my changes. I didn't do anything, so I'm just gonna hit discard. And then after you do that, you are going to look for the pot, which I passed apparently. There it is right there. So you're just going to click and drag that out here. Now, when you do that, you'll notice that it doesn't show up. What you have to do is under the sprite renderer, you have to go to sorting layer. You're going to have to add a new sorting layer. Hit the little plus right here. Hit the little plus right here, name it objects, and then drag it above player. Because you always want the player to be on the bottom, just because whatever's on the bottom gets drawn last, which means it'll always show up on top of everything. There are going to be certain circumstances a little bit later down the road where that's not going to be the case, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Anyway, after you create the objects layer, you go back to your pot, you go to sorting layer, and then you change that to the objects layer, and there it is. I'm going to delete that, since I already have a pot here. Now with that, you want to, with your pot selected, you want to change the name of it to pot. You want to add 2 box colliders. One will be a trigger, the other will be a physical box collider. The physical box collider, you want to be the size of the pot. And then the trigger, you want to be slightly bigger than the pot. Once you have those done, you also want to add an animator. Once you get your animator in, you can move your project over here. Make sure we get this up here. And then you want to go to animation, and you want to create 2 animations for your pot. The first animation is going to be pot idle. So all you're going to do for pot idle is just drag the pot to here, and then that's it. The next one you're going to want to create is called pot break. Pot break, you want to drag these 4 out here at 0, 5, 10, 15, and repeat that last one at 20. Let me make sure. I think I know what I did of why that does that. I think I did that twice. There we go. There we go. So that's what your animation should look like. As far as where to save your animations, I should have probably gone over that first. Under animations, you're going to want to create a new folder called objects. and then breakable, and then there's where you save your animations. Once you have your animations done, you're going to go up to the animator, and you're going to want to have it look something like this. It'll automatically create a transition from entry to pot idle, but you want to create a transition by right-clicking and hit make transition from pot idle to pot break, and then a transition by right-clicking on pot break, make transition from pot break to exit. Here, transition between pot break and pot idle. There shouldn't be anything on here. Matter of fact, we should set all that to 0, 0, 0, 0. Actually, fixed duration, I believe we want to keep at 0.25. All right. And then your transition also from pot idle to pot break, you want to create a parameter up here called is broken. It's a bool. So create a bool, call it is broken. And then the transition between pot idle and pot break, you're going to add that condition is broken true. For your pot break to exit, you want to have exit time here, and you want to keep everything as is. If it looks a little bit different than mine, no big deal, but you just want to kind of keep everything as is. All right. Once you're done with that, you're going to go to your scripts. You're going to create a new folder by right-clicking, going on create, and then folder. Call that objects. In your objects folder, you're going to create a new folder called breakable. In that breakable, you're going to create a new folder called pot. But you're not going to go into the pot folder yet. You're going to go into the breakable folder. You're going to right-click, create, and you're going to create a script, and you're going to create a mono behavior script. You're going to name it breakable objects, and then you're going to open it. My Visual Studio, my Visual Studio was not open, so it is opening right now. And you're going to do everything I've already done in here. So I'll go over it for you. You're going to create a public string object name, a public float break time, two public bools. One is permanently destroyed, and you're going to default that to false. And another one that says public bool can be broken, and default that one to true. Lastly, you're going to do a public animator and call it animator. And I'll go over what all of these are going to be here as we go through this. In your start, the only thing you're doing here is grabbing the animator. So you're going to do animator equals get component animator. That's all you need to do in start. You're then going to create a function called public void break object. You're going to put in here start coroutine break co. It's going to underline this red. You'll fix that in a minute. Then you're going to do debug.log, and then you're going to put in quotations player broke. Leave a space between broke and then the last quotation. You're going to hit the plus, and you're going to put object name. And if you want to have any type of like punctuation, you're going to hit plus and then your punctuation in quotations. We are going to start doing logs more often. This will help fix any issues or problems that you may come across as your scripts get longer and your game gets bigger. If you don't do these logs, it could be a pain reading through all of this to try to find any errors or issues. So like this log here, if you break the object and the object doesn't break, but you notice that the debug log shows up, then that means your problem is usually within this coroutine. Speaking of the coroutine, you are going to create an enumerator called breakco. You are going to call that animator, and you're going to set its bool is broken to true. Then you're going to yield return null for one frame, and then you're going to set that bool to false. And the reason why you do that is you don't want the animation to loop. So by doing this, you'll make sure that that animation doesn't loop. And then you're going to go yield return new, wait 4 seconds, and then break time. So remember up here, we created the float break time. This is where we're going to use it. And then from there, you're going to create an if statement. If the object is permanently destroyed, then we're just going to destroy that game object, which means it'll never come back unless you start a new game. However, if it is not permanently destroyed, then all we're going to do is deactivate it. A little bit later down the road, we're going to have rooms that respawn objects and enemies. So for now, all that's going to do is deactivate. All that's going to do is deactivate the object. It's not going to reactivate the object. We will do that in a later video. So once this coroutine is created, the IEnumerator, we also want to do a public void can be broken. And all we're going to do in here is change the object from being able to be broken to not being able to be broken, or vice versa. And the reason why you want to have this is, let's just say you change can be broken to false, and you want the player to meet certain conditions, like say they acquire a certain amount of money, or the sword strength has to be a certain point, or whatever the condition is. You can have it so that way the player meets that condition, and then it'll, in a different script, you can call this public void can be broken, and it'll change the object from not being able to be broken to be able to be broken, and then the player can break the object. You also want to have the ability to actually break the object. So you're going to create a private void on trigger enter 2D. You want to change the collision to other, or name it whatever you want, just as long as you know what it is. The very first line you want in here is if not can be broken, return. So what that does is, if the object cannot be broken yet, then this function ends right here. It doesn't go any further. It doesn't do anything. If the object can be broken, however, it will run the next part, which you want to do if other.compare tag, and then player sword, and then in the brackets down here, you want to call that break object function that we've made earlier. And that is all you need to do for here. Now, technically, you can put that break object script onto your pot and it'll work. However, we don't necessarily want to do that. What we want to do is we want to inherit from breakable object. So in that pot folder I had you create earlier, you're going to create a scripting object that is a mono behavior script, and you're going to name it pot. And then you're going to open up pot. Now, in this script, you are not going to do anything other than change right here where it says mono behavior. You want to change that to breakable objects. So what this is called inheritance. So inheritance is a very powerful tool where instead of creating a script for a pot, and then creating a script for a bush, and then creating a script for a crate, and anything else that you want to break, you can create one breakable object script, do a large majority of the work in this script, then create another script, in this case called pot, and inherit from this script. So right now we don't have anything in pot, but this script will still work. And the reason why we're doing this is you want to have options, right? So like when you break the pot, you want to have like a sound that sounds like clay breaking. And you may want different loot to drop in the pot. Well, technically we could do all of that in breakable objects. However, there's going to be a ton of if and or statements. You're also going to have a ton of bowls where you could check whether this is a pot or a bush or a crate or a stone or whatever. And this script is going to get extremely long, extremely confusing, and quite honestly not very efficient or effective. So instead, you create one script that can be used as the base script, and then you can build off that by inheriting from it. Now, we're not doing anything yet, but later down the road, when we get into like sounds and when we get into loot, we can add loot that will only be able to be obtained if you break pots. And then a sound that only plays when you break a pot, and it's going to be different whenever you break a bush or a stone or something like that. So we're going to be doing this a lot with enemies, but inheritance is a very, very, very powerful tool, and it is a good idea to start using that now and start learning about that now. And I'll show you, as you can see, this is called pot, and there's absolutely nothing in here. Sorry about that. All we're doing is inheriting from breakable objects. And then when we go over to Unity, you can see on the pot, all we have is just the pot script, but it still pulled all of the stuff in. Now, since we're here, you want to add pot to your pot and fill in all of this. So object name, you call it whatever you want. If you're going to have multiple pots in a scene, start naming it pot 1, pot 2, whatever. Break time should actually be 0.25. We do not want to permanently destroy it. Yes, we can break it. The animator, don't worry about that. We have the script set up where it'll automatically pull the animator. And now that we've done that, let me make sure the animation goes back on to pot idle. If we hit play, we can go to the object. You notice we can't walk through it, but we can attack it and break it. And now you're able to walk through it. It is no longer there. So because you've done that, you now have breakable objects. You can do the same with a bush. You can do the same with any object that you want to have breakable. If you notice in the art under the project, under project art world, you'll notice that there are these bushes that you can break and all of that. So essentially it's the exact same thing. Only some of the timing is going to be a little bit different. So maybe next video I will quickly go over how to do that. But nonetheless, that is how you make breakable objects. I apologize that this video is not the same format as all the other ones. Like I said, I've had to record this multiple times. Hopefully this one works out and I don't have to re-record it. But if you learned anything, or if you like this video, make sure you give it the big old thumbs up. If you want to continue with this series, make sure you hit that subscribe button, as I have videos like this coming out at least twice a week. I might bump that up to 3 times a week, depending on how popular this gets. But with that being said, this is where I'm going to end the video. So as always, have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one.